Oh my goodness. Have I just been gabbing this whole time, Brian? I've been talking this whole time and I forgot to turn myself off mute. Nice. That's great. Okay. Can everyone hear me now? I just want to make sure. That was kind of silly on my part. It happens though. It happens probably more than I'd like to admit. I'm not gonna admit how many times that does happen, but usually I'm online with someone and someone says, "Hey, Kevin, you're on mute," and oh well, and it catches it real quickly, but not go on for like a minute or two, and like this. Okay, so we're good. I'm assuming. Okay. Oh, you can read the CC. Just want to make sure. Can everyone hear me now? Is the audio on? Is the audio working? Are we all good to go? If you would just in the comments, put that down so I can just make sure that we are good. That's a great idea, Brian, to read the closed caption of the whole thing. I like that. So anyways, I'll get into answering. Oh, you still can't hear? It shows that everything is going out. That is odd. Well, you can read the closed caption though. What about anyone else? Can anyone else see, or can anyone else hear my voice? Or are you just all reading the closed caption? By the way, this is the first time I've gone live like this. So maybe I have a setting that's kind of funky and not quite right. I don't know. Yes, I can't hear you. Okay, Brian, is there anyone else that wants to make a quick comment to say whether they can hear me or not? I'll keep going if you can read the closed caption, however. So we've reached a debt ceiling, and where are we getting the money to fund you? Giesel, great. Thank you very much. Excellent. So where do you get the money? Well, I found out that there are actually 4 places you can get the money, but the first 2, or the 2 of them, aren't used until there's like a huge emergency. So there are basically 2 ways that the government is funding everything that's going on now until Congress decides to lift the debt ceiling, and then we can borrow more money to pay for all the goods and services and your salaries, et cetera, et cetera. But there are 2 places that they are borrowing the money from. One of them is not Social Security. It's a lot of people think, oh, well then, they're borrowing from Social Security. No, they're borrowing from Social Security for other reasons, right? That's happening. And that's why a lot of people are worried that Social Security isn't going to be around. There are 2 other places. The first place that they are borrowing money from is federal employees' pensions, the pension pool. So, you are contributing every paycheck to the pension. If you're FERS, it's probably 0.8 if you're hired before 2013. And if it's 2013 and after, it's like 3.3 or 4.4, something like that, right? It's up there. And it's interesting that in 2013, they upped it, which just makes this pool of money grow larger. And I'm thinking, well, why did they make it larger? But they're not giving people out as much. So it's just growing larger while they're not paying out as much. Why would they do that? And then this whole debt ceiling thing happened. And I realized, and I read in a couple different places that they are borrowing from your pensions, from your pension pool, excuse me, which I felt was really interesting. Right. And of course, they say, well, when we get the debt ceiling lifted, we're going to pay it back. No, really, right now, no one's pensions, retirees' pensions are getting discounted or not. It's not as if they're not getting the whole thing, because they are, just that they're borrowing from the fund right now. Now, okay, I'm just going to leave that there for a sec. OK, Brian, you say, what is let me actually bring that up. All right. What is the number of the document that I need to fill out for my service report? Okay. We'll talk about that real quickly there. Okay, Brian. So the second place that they borrow this from is the G Fund. Remember how everyone says the G Fund is safe. It's safe. Well, they're borrowing from it. And they say they're going to pay it back, which in the past they have, which is just great. And I totally expect that that's going to happen. But then I went back to look at when was the last time the debt ceiling was reached. And this happened last time. It was just under a year and a half ago. So this is actually happening with more frequency. And oh my goodness, are we going to get to the point where this is a very common thing where they're borrowing from the pensions and borrowing from the G fund? And could it be that they get to the spot where they can't pay it back? I'm going to say, assume that right now it's all under control and we're all good to go. But it's just something to make you think, what the heck? What's going on? I need to be thinking about that, right? Always. Okay, let's start answering questions. Brian, what is the number of the document I need to fill out for my service report? Well, there are three different things you could do here. When you talk about your service report, there are a couple different kinds of service report. You could get one from HR. So you can go to HR and say, hey, can you give me a retirement benefit estimate? And that will have a service report in there-ish. Depends on the agency. Every agency prints out something different. And sometimes you have to go to someone to ask for it. Sometimes you have to go to your internal system and have them print that out, and it can be printed out by you through that internal intranet that you have. It really depends on what agency you're in. So that's one way to get that. And that's good to find out what HR thinks that you have. But then there is the another form that you get from OPM. Now, OPM is the one that gives you your benefits, your retirement benefits, your pension, for example, right? And says, yes, you can retire, and make sure that all that goes through. It's not HR. So checking with HR is it's good, and I think it's necessary, but it isn't the word. It isn't the final decision. It isn't the horse's mouth there. You have to go to OPM to get that. If you are let me just look that up actually, just to make sure I'm giving you the exact right numbers, because I don't want to be off on that. Info. Okay, let's see here. Because it depends on whether you're CSRS or FERS. If you are a CSRS, the form is the SF2808. And you can just look this up online real quickly. You can in fact, you know what? I'm just for the fun, I'm going to copy the link for that and put it in the comments, because heck, I can. Okay, so there is for CSRS. For the FERS, it is the SF3102. That is, so actually, let me explain this. Those two are your retirement paperwork, all right? If you're just looking for the, just to get a report, you're not looking to retire. If you're looking for just the report from OPM as to your service record, then what you need to do is fill out the Certified Summary of Federal Service part of the form that I just gave you. All right. And don't sign it. Just turn it into HR and say, hey, I'm not looking to retire. I just want, and it's 2 pages, by the way. You'll turn in those 2 pages and say, hey, I just want the report. Now, as you do this, oh, you are FERS, Brian. Okay. Yeah. Then you'll do the 3102 there. And I'm just going to pull that up. Yep. 3102. You know what I did? I was reading that and I thought, you know what? That doesn't sound right. I apologize. That's for your beneficiaries. Scratch that. I'm going to put in new links. Here we go. I said that and I thought something doesn't sound right. Here we go. The first one is CSRS. The second one is, first one is CSRS. Second one is FERS. And for FERS, it's the 3107. That sounds so much better. 3107. Yeah, there you go. 3107. And that will, and then you fill out just the Certified Summary of Federal Service. On the 3107, it's page 9 and 10. All right. So you just fill that out. And I hate to do this like this without any visuals or anything, because this is actually quite complicated. It's not, oh, just fill out this form and turn it in. So let me walk you through that process. Let me walk you through that verbally so that you understand what's going on. 3107, page 9 and 10. It's called the Certified Summary of Federal Service. You fill out sections A and E. Okay. Don't sign it. Turn it into HR. Now, what HR should do is they should forward it onto OPM, and then a few months later, you're going to get a report back. And it is going to take a few months because they're kind of backed up, and it just takes some time. All right. So they're going to send it back to you in time. However, when you give it to HR, there is a very good possibility that HR will reject it. And they will say, you can't do this unless you're retiring. That's not true. They just don't know that they can do this. And we see this happen all the time with the HR people. It's not their fault. They're just trained one way to do it, and that's not actually the way it's done. So if they ever push back on you and say, hey, you can't do this unless you're going to retire, you say, yes, actually I can. And if you look at the top of page 9 on the 3107, it says you can fill this form out for one of the reasons is something like retirement planning purposes. I'm loosely saying, I don't have it right in front of me, but it's something like that. Retirement planning purposes. And you can say, hey, look, you can, and actually you're obligated to pass this on to OPM. And so really what you're doing is you're pushing back on HR. Kindly, of course, right? We want to be nice and make friends with HR, of course. But you just gently want to say, actually, you can. And you make sure that OPM or HR passes it on to OPM. Now, this report that you're going to get back will list all of your federal service for a stretch of many years, all your years. And it'll say, okay, you worked for this agency from this day to this day, and then you switched agencies and you worked from this day to this day. And it'll say, hey, this counted, but this over here, it didn't count. I know you worked for the government, but it didn't count over here. Oh, and you bought back time from the military too. That counts, and that should be on there. So really, this is your official retirement, when you can retire paperwork. And oddly enough, almost no one knows how to do this. And HR typically doesn't even know that this exists, that you can do this, but it's a real thing. TJ, for retirement counseling purposes. There you go. Thank you. I appreciate that, TJ. Yes, for retirement counseling purposes. Right there. I'll bring it up. Good. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons you can do this. And honestly, if I were you, I would do this every 5 years. And here's why. I've talked with many people who have gotten this report, the Certified Summary of Federal Service, back from OPM, and it's wrong. For example, I remember this one lady, she said, I spent my first 7 years with the federal government in Turkey. Then I came back to the US, finished it out here, went to go retire, and they had no record of my first 7 years. Now, you don't have to go to Turkey for them to lose your time. There's another gentleman I met in Austin, Texas. And he was in our live workshop learning about his benefits, and he had 30 years of service. And he told the whole class right there, he said, hey, I went to go retire and they wouldn't let me. And I said, why wouldn't they let you? And he said, because I went to retire and they said that I didn't have 30 years. And I said, yes, I do. They said, no, you don't. You only have 15. And he said, no, I have 30. No, 15, no, 30, no, 15, no, 30, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he said, right now, I'm trying to work out with OPM and figure out how to retire. But they're not letting me retire because they don't have all of my federal service. And I met another guy in DC one time. He said, when I did this report, it was wrong. And he said, I'm on my 3rd year of trying to fix it. And it's still not fixed. So it can take some time. So everyone needs to do this. Everyone needs to do this. Boy, it's tough. I've heard stories of people going in. They have literally, they're at their retirement party at work. Everyone's throwing a big party. Hey, congratulations, you're retiring. Yay. Gets a phone call, says, we have problems. You don't have enough years. You can't retire. And that person had to go back to the party to say, yeah, just kidding. I can't retire. Take some cake on your way, go back to work kind of thing. Horrible. And I can tell story after story of things like that. It happens actually more than you think. When I'm in a live class and I say, has anyone ever heard this? People will raise their hand. Yeah, I heard it happen to this person and this person and this person. It happens. Again, totally on accident. I'm sure there's nothing, whether it's a human error or a computer error, whatever it is, you just have to make sure that you are good, that you, have all the years recorded, have everything set, and make sure that you aren't put in a lurch, put in a weird spot when you have to retire or when you want to retire and then realize, oh, I can't because of something like that. So yeah, really, really interesting, isn't it? That happens more than you would think. Good. All right. So everyone needs to go do that, by the way. So go do that. Get a report from HR and get this certified summary of federal service from OPM as well. That'll be an important thing to do for you. Okay. If you have other questions, put them in there. I've got some other questions from workshops. And by the way, I'm just going to put this up here, right here. We do workshops all the time. I'm going to Montana to do a workshop in a couple hours. Well, I'm leaving in a couple hours to go do a workshop in Montana. And then I'm in New England. And then I'm not doing as many in-person workshops as I did before the pandemic, but we're doing webinars all the time. And so we are answering questions like this constantly. So if you haven't been to one of our workshops, please come join us, because it kind of gives you the full picture and says, okay, here's each of your benefits, but here's a full picture, and you got to figure out how to put the full picture together. It'll kind of blow your mind. Okay. And here are some of the questions that we get from federal employees. Let's see. Okay, Brian, you have another question. I'm just going to put this up here. I want to retire 7/31/23. Congrats. That's really soon. Excellent. I might not have the report back in time. You're right, Brian. In your case, this is what I would do. If I were to be retiring in the next 6 months or so, maybe not send it, because you may not get it back in time, and you're spot on with that. You very well may not. But I would fill out your paperwork and then go make sure it's correct. Now, here's the hard part, because what we help federal employees make sure that their paperwork is correct and it's all set, and there aren't mistakes. But what we have found is when people turn in their retirement paperwork, 99% of the time there are mistakes on it. And that's no joke. That's not inflating numbers. That's actually a little bit conservative, to tell you the truth. Almost every single retirement package that's turned into HR has mistakes on it. And what happens if there are mistakes on it is that A, it could delay your retirement, receiving retirement benefits. B, you could make it so that you're not getting as much money as you're entitled to. Neither of those situations are good. And so it's really important that you turn this in crisp and pristine. For example, if you turn this in with whiteout, you made a mistake. Oh, I'm going to white it out and write over it or whatever. It will delay. That's real. That's a thing. So that can be tough sometimes. So, if you are thinking, hey, I need to, Brian, if you haven't been to one of our workshops, by the way, we have those who can help you do that, to look at your paperwork and make sure it's good, make sure you're all set. If you don't If you haven't been to one of our workshops, come to one of our workshops real soon. Sign up, go to fedpilot.com and sign up for one. If you want to just reach out to me just real quickly, I'm going to put my FedPilot. I'm just going to put my our basic email address in there that you can just email me real quickly, and I'll get you over to someone who can review the paperwork and make sure that it's correct, because it's kind of important that you go out with a good, clean retirement. Okay. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. Let's see here. I have a part 2 tomorrow at 1 p.m. Excellent, Brian. Brian, that's perfect, Brian. Good. So here, I'm going to put your comment up here. Brian, what you're saying is when anyone comes to our workshop, we call that part 1. Part 2 is when you get to review your benefits with your numbers in it and make sure that everything is put together, dialed in, and make sure that it's all good. And by the way, all of this is free. No cost, obligation sales pitch. There's nothing like that. That's all taken care of, so you don't need to worry about it. So what Brian is saying, that he's been to one of our workshops before. Thank you, Brian. And he's starting part 2 tomorrow. And that's great, because they will be able to look over your paperwork and make sure that you are covered and that it's nice and good and you're not going to have huge hiccups. So that's perfect. Good job. I love it. All right. Let me bring up Thomas's comment here. I want to retire in May of 2026. I got a report from HR and time seems good. What steps and when should I file? Great question. So I just want to reiterate again, Thomas, that although HR says you're all good, you got to go to OPM too. You have to. You really do. Because OPM and HR don't always talk to each other. I know it sounds weird, but even HR, from one HR agency to another HR in a different agency, they don't talk to each other. I was talking to this one woman who switched agencies one time, and they weren't getting the information back from the first. The second agency wasn't getting information back from the first agency, and so they just reached out to this woman and said, "Hey, by the way, we're not getting the information back. We got to start your stuff up. How much annual leave did you have saved up with them?" She could have said 2,000 hours, although that's not a real thing, right? I mean, she could have said whatever, but they're asking her what it is. So the cross communication between agencies and OPM isn't the greatest. And I have seen plenty of times where HR says one thing and OPM says something completely different. So you want to make sure they're on the same page. So getting something from HR is a good start. Don't stop there. Keep going to OPM and make sure they're good too. Okay, so go get that from OPM. And then it says, what time seems good? Typically, I like to see retirement applications turned in about 6 months in advance. That makes it so that you know what you're doing. HR has plenty of time to figure out what they're doing on their end, and it can just roll along and good. Now, it's possible that you can just one day say, you know what, I'm done, I'm out, turn in paperwork on that day and say I'm done. And that's legit as well. You can do that. Not that I would not encourage that, but it is possible to do that. But we suggest maybe 6 months in advance, turn in your paperwork, make sure everything is good. And that would be the file that you're talking about, turning that paperwork in there. Once you got that going, and from that paperwork, if there's any other paperwork that needs to be pulled together, that'll kind of prompt you to do any other paperwork. And what other steps? Well, oh boy. Okay. And here's the issue. All right. And I want to say the big issue about retiring from the federal government. Thomas, you say, what steps? There are some basic steps like turning in your retirement package, right? Turning that in. But everyone's going to be different. It really depends because everyone's going to have different things that they're going to turn in if there's a divorce or if there are some other things, right? You want to turn extra paperwork in, but you never want to turn in extra paperwork that you weren't asked for. That's just a hint for you, okay? But everyone is going to be a little bit different. For example, what should you do with your TSP? I get that question all the time. When I retire, what should I do with my TSP? It depends. Everyone is going to be different. As I prepare for retirement, for example, let me give you an example. When you prepare for retirement and you're thinking, okay, my TSP, and when you find out, by the way, I'll just throw this one out. When you find out that you're not going to get your first pension check for possibly 3 to 6 months, which is what is happening now. Yes, you heard that right. It's quite likely it will be 3 to 6 months before you get your first pension check. Then they think, okay, well, oh my goodness, I don't have that much savings on my bank account, but I do have my TSP, right? Well, when you retire, it's not like you can just have instant access to your TSP. I'd like to say that you could, but it takes a good month, if not longer, to be able to access money, to pull money out. So you have a month of what? A month of where are you going to get that money to live on? And so there are specific things that you need to make sure that, again, during part 2, after our workshops, those things are walked through and say, okay, let's just make sure you're good. Do you have this in line? Do you have this in line? What are you going to do with this? Okay, well, you're thinking of a few things. Let's do this and this and this and make sure that you're good there. Then this will come along. Now, this brings up another good point because we think about how much money am I going to get? And that's a good question to ask. However, very few people talk about when do I get that money? Because will you get your pension the correct amount? Yes, eventually. Not right away, obviously, right? So you need to figure out not only how much am I going to get, but when am I going to get each piece of it? And is it going to come to me? There's some of it that there is some of your pension that could be delayed and then given to you in a lump. And then you have to ask, well, what does that do with taxes? To get a lump sum like that. Okay, well, and what year are you receiving lump sums? And does that put you into a higher tax bracket so you're paying bonuses to the IRS? And how do you mitigate that so you're not paying as many taxes and offsetting that, but then making sure you're not pulling too much out of your TSP to really bump it up? Because if you pull out of your TSP and then you get a lump sum, you can see where that goes, right? And so the steps for everyone are going to be different. I'd like to give, and in fact, I thought about this. Well, you need to do this and this and this. And as I started, like creating a document thinking, okay, here are the steps, I started to realize, well, you don't need that. You don't always need that one. And should I put all the exceptions for that one or not? And then, sometimes you need that one up there, that step there, but not always. And all of a sudden it turned into this huge hierarchical tree of, if this, then this, and it was kind of crazy. So I decided, you know what? No, let's not do that because it would be too much. But it's a great question. And again, during part 2, after our workshops, we have someone to dive in with you to make sure that according to your circumstances, whatever they may be, and everyone, again, is going to be different. According to your circumstances, what steps do you need to take? And making sure you're taking them in the right order, in the right way, at the right time, because all 3 of those are different issues, right? You have to do them all in that way, and then making sure you get everything that you deserve or are entitled to. I think a lot of federal employees think that retiring from the federal government, when you retire, you just get what you get, what the government gives you, right? That's not how it works. If you just take the default, guess who the default is best for? It's not you. It's for the government. They're going to give you what is best, just a kind of low level of this is how much you get. but you can make it more if there are certain steps taken at specific times and put yourself in certain circumstances that will make it more. So again, that's why we do the part 2 after the workshops, either live, the in-person workshops or the webinars that we do, to make sure that to make sure you're not leaving money on the table, basically. So you can get all the money that you deserve and retire when you want to. And actually, it's really interesting because as we do this, we find that people are saying, you know what, I think I need to retire in 3 years. And then they go through this and they realize, wait, I can retire today. Can I really do that? And I don't want to say a lot of times, but some of the time the answer is you could. Yes, you can retire today if you want to. Maybe not literally today, but we need to, do some things to make sure that you're in the right spot so you can get everything that you deserve. But yeah, pretty much. And then on the opposite happens sometimes too. Hey, I want to retire in 3 years. Oh, those first 3 years didn't count. And so I have to wait another 3 years after that. Oh, but at least right? You don't want to get your hopes up on difficult decisions or, things that you thought were going to happen. And now, oh, I don't get that. Or, that didn't count. What? I hear that all the time. I don't know whether I make people happy or depress them when they come to our workshops because there are so many preconceived ideas of this is how it works. And when they find out, oh, it's not that way, or oh, that's even better than what I thought. So I think I do both. I think I make people really happy with our workshops and at the same time depress them. Maybe I, make some happy, make others depressed. I don't know. But it's better to know at least what you're going to get before you get there, because you don't want to be hit at the end and go, what the heck? I didn't expect that. Why did that happen? Right? No, you don't want that. So there we go. So do we have any other questions? We have a number of people online right now in either Facebook or YouTube, but if you have a question, put it on there. I'll go to one of the questions that we have recently. I save all these questions because there are just so many, and there's so many good, and they're all just a little bit different. Okay. Here's one. I'm gonna put this. Can I just put this up? You know what? I'm just gonna do this here real quickly. I don't know how big this is gonna be here. This may be huge. Yes, that was much huger than I expected it to be. So let me bring this down a little bit. All right. If you have survivor benefit plan, let me do this right. Okay. If you have survivor benefit plan, and I'm reading this backwards on my teleprompter here, so forgive me for the slowness of this. What does happen to your pension after you die and your spouse is still living? Okay. So basically what this question asks is, what happens to your pension if you die first and your spouse continues to live? Well, if you did survivor benefit plan, then some percentage of your pension can go to your spouse and will go to your spouse every month. It's either for FERS, it's either 25 or 50%. For SURS, it's a sliding scale from $1 to 55%. So let's say 50%, just for the fun of it. 50% of your pension can go to your spouse, and they get to keep FEHB, your health care. If you don't do survivor benefit plan, then no money, assuming that you're retired and you die, no money will go to your spouse from your pension. And also the FEHB is canceled and they don't get to keep it. So that's kind of a big issue there, because a lot of people want to make sure that they pass on healthcare to their spouse, but you can't if you don't do survivor benefit plan. But at the same time, survivor benefit plan also passes on money. But if you have enough life insurance, then maybe you don't want to pass on the pension because you're already paying for life insurance, and that's good enough, right? That's going to cover. you don't want to have to pay for more because you don't need more because you've already figured it out. But you're kind of stuck. You have to do either both of them or none of them. And that's the way they set it up. I'm not a fan of the survivor benefit plan and how it was organized. I love the survivor benefit plan and what they give to you as benefits, money to your spouse or healthcare to your spouse if you die first. But not a fan of how they put that together. And let me give you an example. There was a lady this was in Houston, and she came in one time to our workshop, and it was before the workshop, and she and I started talking, and she just started telling me her situation. Well, I'm doing this. She said, my husband was going to come with me today, but he wasn't feeling well, so he stayed home. And she said, I almost stayed home as well, but I thought, I might as well come anyways. So obviously she was there, and she said that her husband had retired from the CSRS system, and she was in the FERS system, and she was looking to retire too. But he had retired, and I said, tell me, what did your husband do with the survivor benefit plan on his end? And she said, well, he gave me the full amount. And I said, so tell me why did he do that for you? Was it because of the money that you would get? And she said, no. It's not because of the money, because if he dies, I have plenty of life insurance. I'm going to be fine with that. And she said, we did it for the health care. That's when I went, oh my dear, we have a little bit of an issue here. Very possibly have an issue here, because if a federal couple federal employee married to another federal employee, if a federal couple, if they do the survivor benefit plan for each other because of the health care, well, because they were a federal employee, they get health care pretty much no matter what. So they're actually not doing this program for the health care. They're doing it for the money. Now, there are a few exceptions to that, but overall, that's what's going on. So basically, what happened is that she would, because she is a FERS and she would retire, she would get healthcare no matter what for the rest of her life. Whether her husband carried the health insurance or not, it didn't matter. She was going to get it because she was a federal employee. But that's why he did the survivor benefit plan, not knowing that she would get to keep it. And so I said, so basically it sounds like, and I could be wrong on this, so don't take my word for it right now, but it sounds like you're paying for a benefit you don't need. How much are you paying for this per month? She said $600 a month. Wow. Are you kidding me? I said, oh my dear, are you kidding? I'm so sorry. She goes, oh, can I get out of it? Now, before I give you the answer to that, can I get out, or can my husband get out of it so he's not paying that anymore? There are some things on your paperwork that when you put it down, you're done. You put it down, and that is gospel. That is the way it's going to be. There's no going back. There's nothing you can do about it. There are other things that you can change, not a problem, whenever you want to. And there are other things that if you change within a certain time frame, you're okay. But if you miss that time frame, then you're going to be in trouble. And the survivor benefits is one of those issues where what happened was I said, how long ago did your husband retire? And she quickly figured it out in her head, and she said 16 months ago. Well, you have 18 months after retirement to make any corrections on the survivor benefit plan. And I said, wow. Now think about this. I said, if your husband being sick today convinced you to stay home and you decided to stay home, you would have missed this, and you would have come to the next one, which was scheduled for 3 months out, and you would have missed that completely and not been able to change it. But your husband, because he's within 2 months of the deadline, can go back and change it now. That may be something that you want to do. Now, I don't give any financial advice. I don't say you have to do this or you must, but I'm saying there's a strong possibility that you're just wasting money right now. and you don't need to. There are little things like that all over your benefits that if you know about it, you can take advantage of. But if you don't know about it, I had another guy in DC. He came in and I said, when are you retiring? He said, oh, I already retired. I retired last month. I just came here to figure out what I'm going to get. And as we talked about the survivor benefit plan, he was just shaking his head. He was in the front row, just shaking his head going, oh, no. I asked him, what's going on? He said, HR told me to do something completely different than what I should have done. I messed this up. Yeah. It happens all the time. It happens all the time, which is why we love to see those who are even younger come into our workshops so that they can learn and benefit from everyone's experiences and the stories that we tell, and to go, oh, that's how it works. Oh, well, I can set myself up in this way to make sure I get this. Oh, there's this little rule. And there are thousands of little rules all over the place, which makes federal employee retirement so much more complicated than the average American. Not even close to that. Not even close to a regular American complication. It is so much more complex. And so it's really important to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row, that you have everything just dialed in just perfectly so that you get everything that you deserve. All right. Well, so that's the answer to that. Actually, did I answer? Yes, I did answer that. If you don't have SBP, what happens? And if you do have SBP, that is what happens there. So very good. All right. Well, it's been about 45 minutes. Do we have any last questions? Because if so, I'd be happy to take a question. And if not, I'll just schedule another time to do one of these. I love taking live questions, love taking these questions because we get to answer things right off the bat, just like that, and help some people be better prepared for retirement. It doesn't look like it, and that's all right. Well, good. It's Monday. It's Monday, and I hope you have a fabulous week after Easter and getting into the spring now. Better weather, later out, and you can go do more things like, I don't know, work in the yard or whatever you want to do, whatever it may be. But whatever it is, if you would, please go sign up for one of our workshops at fedpilot.com. Choose a day. We have some in-person ones if you're in that location, or just some web ones. And we'd love to have you there to make sure that you are ready for your retirement on the early end, as early as possible. We want you to retire as soon as possible with as much money as possible. I think everyone wants to do that, right? Try to get out as soon as you can, but not push it at the same time, right? You want to make sure that you're ready. Well, come make sure you're ready. Thanks for joining. For everyone who jumped on, we have a bunch of people on. I thank you for being here. Go sign up for one of our workshops and learn a whole bunch more. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you.